Imagine opening an ancient map, drawn centuries ago, and realizing it shows something that would only be officially discovered much later. It sounds like science fiction, but it really happened. Some maps from the past hold secrets that still puzzle us today. Geographical details that shouldn't be there, islands that hadn't yet been found by Europeans, and even outlines of entire continents. How did they know this? Coincidence, luck, or lost knowledge? Throughout history, humanity has always tried to map the world. Every line drawn on parchment was an attempt to decipher the unknown. But what's surprising is that some cartographers seemed far ahead of their time. It's as if they had traveled through time and returned with forbidden information. These mysterious maps aren't just beautiful drawings, they raise deep questions about what we really knew, or failed to record, about the Earth. After all, who taught these navigators and cartographers to depict lands that, in theory, would only be discovered centuries later? What's even more curious, many of these maps survived time almost by chance, forgotten in libraries, stored in monasteries, or abandoned in dusty archives. Today, they're treated as enigmas that challenge our notion of historical progress. In the next part, we'll dive into one of the most famous examples, a map that shows the American continent, almost 20 years before Columbus set foot in the New World. What about you? Have you ever considered that the world might have been smaller for some ancient peoples than we imagine? Now hold on to this. There's a map from 1507, created by the German cartographer Martin Waldseemüller, that already showed the American continent with astonishing detail. What's even more intriguing is that this map appeared 20 years before Magellan circumnavigated the globe and just a short time after Columbus's voyage. How could someone already have an idea of the New World so quickly? Waldseemüller's map was the first to use the name America in honor of Amerigo Vespucci, the explorer who described those lands as a new continent. But what stands out isn't just the naming. It's the way he outlined parts of South America with astonishing accuracy, considering the navigation techniques of the time. Think about it. In 1507, most Europeans had barely ventured beyond the Atlantic coast. And suddenly a map appears that, in a way, already predicted the existence of something much larger. Coincidence? Intuition? Or were there already circulating pieces of information from older sources, perhaps from navigators forgotten by history? This document, known as the Map That Named America, remained hidden for centuries in a German library. Today it's considered one of the most valuable pieces of world cartography, so much so that the United States paid millions to acquire the copy in 2001. And if I told you there's another map, even more mysterious, that seems to show not just America, but also Antarctica, that's where the story gets even more unbelievable. Now imagine unrolling a nearly 500-year-old parchment and seeing Antarctica drawn on it, long before any European ship came close to that icy continent. Sounds like something out of a movie, but it happened with the famous Piri Reis map of 1513. This map was created by a Turkish Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis, a man obsessed with collecting information from navigators, sailors, and even ancient documents. What he recorded is simply unbelievable. His map shows the western coast of Africa, Europe, South America, and, to everyone's surprise, a piece of land that many believe to be Antarctica. But here's the detail that makes it even more mysterious. In the map, the region appears ice-free. This has sparked wild theories. Did Piri Reis have access to maps from far older civilizations, from a time when Antarctica wasn't covered by kilometers of ice? It's as if someone had literally photographed the Earth in prehistoric times and handed it to him. Of course, many historians try to explain the coincidence by saying it might have been a drawing error or a confusion with the South American coast, but the similarity to Antarctica's outline is so striking that it still sparks heated debates today. What's even more curious, Piri Reis claimed to have used much older maps, some even from the time of Alexander the Great. How did he gain access to them? Total mystery. In the next part, we'll see how other maps also hide astonishing secrets, like depictions of islands that would only be confirmed centuries later. Now tell me, what would you do if you found an ancient map showing an island that, officially, would only be discovered centuries later? That's exactly what intrigues cartography scholars. One of the most famous examples is the so-called St. Brendan's Island, which appeared on medieval maps of the North Atlantic. Many navigators swore it existed, and some even claimed to have seen it from afar. But when expeditions were sent to confirm, nothing. It was as if the island was playing hide-and-seek with explorers. Another curious case is the Falkland Islands. They were already marked on certain European maps before being rediscovered officially in the 17th century. How do we explain this? Were they sighted by anonymous sailors, forgotten by history, or was there some kind of secret knowledge circulating among cartographers? And it doesn't stop there. Some documents even reference lands in the Pacific that would only be recognized much later. It's as if the planet was, in a way, a spoiler for these ancient mapmakers. Of course, there's the possibility of errors, rumors, or even simple inventions to fill empty spaces on maps. But the coincidence of so many islands appearing ahead of their time gives the feeling that there was much more knowledge than we imagine lost to time. And if I told you that, beyond mysterious islands, there are maps showing navigation routes that only make sense with modern technology. In the next part, we'll dive into that astonishing detail. Imagine a 16th century navigator plotting a route so precise that today it seems like something from a satellite. That's what some ancient maps suggest. Near-perfect navigation lines crossing entire oceans, as if their creators had access to global positioning technology long before the invention of GPS. One intriguing example comes from Portuguese and Spanish maps from the so-called Age of Discovery. In them, some oceanic routes appear with distances and proportions that impress even modern experts. How do we explain such precision in an era when compasses were still rudimentary and calculating longitude was nearly impossible? One hypothesis is that these navigators mastered techniques now forgotten, like reading stars and ocean currents in a far more advanced way than we assume. But some say this points to even older sources, perhaps maps inherited from unknown civilizations that had already explored the globe before Columbus and Magellan. Sounds far-fetched? Then consider this. Some map sections show not only the shortest path but also precise locations of strategic stopovers, like islands in the middle of the Atlantic that served as rest stops. It's as if someone had already made the journey before and simply handed over the instruction manual. And the detail that makes it all even more fascinating is that certain maps show even polar or remote regions with plausible navigation lines. Coincidence or a historical spoiler? In the next part, we'll explore another mystery: maps that depict cities and monuments that supposedly didn't yet exist. Now, hold on to this. Some ancient maps don't just show lands and seas. They also include references to cities and structures that officially shouldn't have been there yet. And this opens the door to theories that range from fascinating to utterly enigmatic. One intriguing example appears in certain medieval Arab maps, which already marked regions in the interior of Africa with notations of significant cities. The catch: many of these places would only be rediscovered by Europeans centuries later, like Timbuktu, a thriving cultural hub that flourished while the rest of the world couldn't even imagine its grandeur. Another curious case involves Central Asia. Ancient maps show trade routes and cities along the so-called Silk Road with startling accuracy, even in places European explorers hadn't yet reached. It's as if the map was saying, "Relax, this road is an old friend." Even more intriguing are depictions of mysterious monuments. Some cartographic records point to supposed pyramids and ruins in barely explored areas, raising the question, were these just generic symbols used to indicate advanced civilizations or actual clues to structures that would only be confirmed by archaeology centuries later? Of course, not everything can be taken at face value. Sometimes these were more illustrated guesses than concrete data. But when coincidences pile up, it's hard not to wonder, to what extent did these cartographers have access to information that slipped through the cracks of official history? And if I told you that some of these maps also feature mythical creatures and symbols blending reality and imagination, that's the next enigma. Imagine being on the deck of a ship, looking at the map meant to guide your journey, and coming face to face with a giant drawing of a sea serpent or a fire-breathing dragon in the middle of the ocean. That's exactly how many medieval maps depicted the unknown. These fantastical creatures weren't just decorative illustrations. For the navigators of the time, they were warnings. Beware, danger may lurk here. After all, crossing uncharted seas was as terrifying as entering a dark forest without a lantern, and by drawing a monster, the cartographer not only issued a caution, but also captured the collective fear of facing the unknown. What's even more curious is that in some cases, these monsters seem to align with real accounts of animals that sailors didn't yet recognize. A giant octopus, perhaps a colossal squid, a sea serpent, maybe just a whale or a giant eel. It's as if science was hidden beneath a layer of myth. There's also the theory that some of these symbols weren't actual monsters, but secret codes among cartographers, representing dangerous ocean currents, reefs, or even areas of dead calm, where ships could be trapped for weeks. A brilliant detail disguised as fantasy. Now, if these monsters already kept navigators up at night, wait until you hear about maps that seem to contain advanced astronomical knowledge long before modern science. Imagine opening an ancient map and realizing it doesn't just show lands and seas, but also alignments with constellations. It sounds far-fetched, but there are cartographic records that suggest astronomical knowledge far more advanced than we'd expect for the time. Some Arab and Chinese maps, for example, didn't limit themselves to terrestrial geography. They included markings tied to the stars, as if the sky were an essential compass for navigation. In some cases, even the positions of major cities were linked to specific constellations, almost as if the map were a reflection of the heavens on Earth. What's even more impressive is that some of these records include corrections to longitude and latitude that would only make sense with highly sophisticated astronomical observations. How do we explain this centuries before the invention of modern instruments? Coincidence? Lost traditions? Or could ancient civilizations have mastered techniques that simply didn't survive to reach us? Think about it. If today we use satellites to cross oceans with precision, in the past, the stars were the natural GPS. But what's astonishing is how some maps seem to have integrated this information so accurately that even modern experts are puzzled. And as if that weren't enough, there are maps that go further. They not only seem inspired by the sky, but also hint at possible knowledge of long-term astronomical cycles, like eclipses and shifts in constellations. In the next part, we'll dive into another fascinating field: maps that mysteriously disappeared and could change everything we know about history. Now, imagine how many mysteries we could unravel if some legendary maps hadn't simply vanished. Yes, there are historical records of maps that would completely reshape our view of the past, but they disappeared, as if they never existed. One famous example is the Vinland map, which supposedly showed lands in the American continent explored by the Vikings long before Columbus. For years, scholars debated its authenticity, until versions of the document vanished from private collections and libraries, leaving a trail of doubts. Another case is a supposed map from classical antiquity, mentioned by some chroniclers, that depicted lands south of the known world. No copy exists, only vague references in ancient texts, opening the door to endless speculation. Was it a prehistoric Antarctica, or just a literary invention? And we can't forget the accounts of maps stored in temples and libraries that were destroyed in fires, like the legendary Library of Alexandria. How many cartographic secrets were lost there? Perhaps enough to rewrite the history of navigation. What's intriguing is that, often, when one of these maps disappeared, it coincided with shifts in power and territorial disputes. Were some deliberately hidden to maintain strategic advantages? These ghost maps make us wonder, what if the history we know is just a piece of a much larger puzzle? In the next part, we'll wrap up this journey with a surprising reflection. Could these mysterious maps point to advanced civilizations that simply vanished from our historical radar? After diving into these enigmas, the inevitable question arises: how did people from centuries ago manage to depict lands, routes, and even stars with such precision, long before we had satellites, modern telescopes, or even a complete notion of the globe? Some believe these maps are mere coincidences, the result of errors or exaggerations by creative cartographers. Others argue they're proof of advanced civilizations whose knowledge was swallowed by time. And there are those who suggest unlikely contacts between distant cultures, sharing information long before official history recorded it. It's fascinating to think that every ancient map is more than just a piece of paper. It's a portal to a time when the world was both terrifying and full of promise. Lines and symbols that to us seem like mere scribbles were for them clues to survival, travel guides, and even enigmatic messages for the future. In the end, these maps remind us of something essential. Humanity has always had a thirst to explore, imagine, and record the unknown. And perhaps the greatest discovery isn't in the lands they drew, but in the mystery they still carry. Now I ask you, do we already know everything about our past? Or are there still secrets hidden in some forgotten map, tucked away in a dusty drawer? If you enjoyed this journey through time, don't forget to leave a like, share with that curious friend, and of course subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments, which of these maps did you find the most mysterious?